USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Game of the Week podcast from US College Hockey Online at USCHO.com. An in-depth look at this week's top college hockey matchup and a preview of the other big games.
This is the Game of the Week podcast. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly. Well, it sounds like it's going to be three really great games down in Hamden, Connecticut this weekend. Clarkson, a very good team. Casey Jones putting together a pretty good track record over the last few seasons. And Quinnipiac, a perennial plus 500 team. It should be something that helps us sort out just who the cream of the crop is in that league.
And we're joined this week on the Game of the Week podcast by the head coach of Quinnipiac University. That's longtime head coach Rand Pecknold. Rand, what a crazy season it's been to this point. You guys started later than most teams, and you have still played 10 games in a very short period of time. Pretty successful thus far, 6-3-1 mark. But what has it been like just getting out of the gate here?
Yeah, it's been a crazy year. It's certainly everybody's got to deal with COVID and the protocols and the worry that comes along with it. And even, early on in the year, the practices and how small groups and how you're going to protect your guys and keep them in small pods and lifting. And it's been exhausting. I'm not going to lie, but we found a way to make it through. I think we've been solid so far. I don't think we've played our best hockey. I think we've, there was a lot of games in a short time, and I think mentally, some of our guys handled it well and some of our guys didn't. So I think we've got a lot more to give, and we can be better than our record, to be honest with you.
When I look at just the makeup of your team, you've got some players that people recognize the name and no more so than Odin Tufto, who, I think when you have a player who's really solid all 4 years, fans out there, even the media, people like us, feel like they've been there for 6 or 7 because we've heard that name so much. But he's really off to a nice start here. 19 points in 10 games, 4 goals for you. He seems to be a player that continues every year to take another step forward. Can you just maybe give us a little bit on Odin?
Yeah, he's had a great 4-year development. Every year he's gotten better at certain things, from his freshman to sophomore, junior, and now to the senior. He's taken a jump again this year. And that's a tribute to kind of our culture and our development model, and our strength coach does a good job with him. And I think a lot of it too is Odin buys in. He wants to get better. He's very coachable. Whether it's, changing his diet or changing his sleep habits or, working on face-offs or, all little things, like everything matters. I got him in his first year. He played wing for us because we just didn't think he was ready to play center, but I got on him that whole year to work on his face-offs, and he's done that. He's been great for 3 years taking draws, and now I think he's close to 70%. So my big thing with him is if you're winning draws, we have the puck and you can go score, that's what all those guys want to do. They want to put up points on the board. So we got to have the puck. But I've been really happy with him. He's had a great start, and he's our captain this year. He's done a really nice job for us.
Odin's obviously a senior, another senior in your class, your goaltender, and he has been solid throughout his entire career down in Southern Connecticut, and that's Keith Petruzzelli. He was a guy that split time early in his career, but he's been able to take the ball and run last season, and obviously had started all 10 games this year. What's his development been like?
Yeah, Petro's been, similar to Tufto, on a great development path for us. Justin Eddy's our goalie coach now, has done a great job with him. Before that was Jared Wayman, then he left to go to the Lightning. But they've both done a nice job with him. Keith's committed and working on his game. And, I think last year from November on is really when he kind of popped and put everything together. And he started every game the last 2 years for us. So we've been very happy with him. And, he can only get better. He's only going to get stronger and mature. And he's had a real good start to the year.
We're talking with Rand Pecknold, head coach at Quinnipiac, putting together the schedule in the ECAC with 8 of the teams electing not to play this year. Must have been quite the process. And one of the things that really jumps out to me about that is in a typical ECAC season, each weekend you're facing 2 different teams for 1 game. Now you're going to play the same team 2 or 3 times over a weekend. How does that change preparation? I mean, you're going to know all these teams very, very well.
Yeah, absolutely. We know them anyways, we've had some pretty good battles with a few of these teams, anyways, going into the year. But, I think, I actually like just playing the one same team on the weekend, whether it's 2 or 3 games. I think it's better for the coaches. It's better for the players. Obviously we've had, the ECAC's had that travel partner thing for, I don't even know how long, forever, it seems, before I was even in the league. But I do like, just focusing on one opponent. I think, again, it's a lot easier. And I think it's a lot easier on the assistant coaches who do a lot of the video work and on your video coach, instead of having to get ready for 2 teams every week, now it's just one. So I think it's a better, lifestyle for those guys. They don't have to put as much time, and they definitely listen. They put in a ton of time, but it's a little bit less when you don't have to get ready for 2 teams.
It seems that the way the schedule is put together, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Friday, Saturday, unlike a lot of teams around college hockey this season, you're going to be able to put together sort of a regular routine as opposed to having to grab games at odd times during the week.
Yeah, well, we will now moving forward. The past month has been all over the place. We basically, I think it was 2 games, 2 days off, 2 games, 2 days. It ran that for our first 8 games. So it wasn't that regular of a schedule at that point. But, we were happy just to be playing games and have an opportunity to get out there after the 9.5 month layoff. So now we'll settle a little bit better. Obviously, I think it's the right move for us to play Clarkson, 3-3, and then to go to Clarkson for 3-3. I wish we had done that with St. Lawrence too. I'm not sure why that didn't happen. I thought we should have, just from a travel perspective and a safety perspective. I think you're playing the same opponent. You might as well, instead of having us and St. Lawrence have to go up and back for one game. I thought that was a little crazy, but anyway, we move on. But again, we're happy to be playing. It's such a tough environment, a tough year for everybody. And I think it's hard on the players mentally too. It's just a grind for them, and they get so excited to go to college and be in such a nice social environment where they're learning, they're getting better at hockey, they're getting better academically. And obviously a lot of that's been taken away with the pandemic. And I think that's a big thing we have to manage as coaches, is manage their mental state too.
In a moment, Jim's going to get to your opponent this weekend, Clarkson. The other 2 teams in your league, St. Lawrence, who you've seen, and Colgate, are both seeming to take some steps forward. Any kind of thoughts on the overall competitiveness of this quartet of teams left? Yeah,
I thought St. Lawrence, they've taken a nice jump. They're much better. Brex did a nice job. They brought in some good freshmen. I think even more than that, he's got a better culture going there already. You can tell. We had 2 good games with them. Their goalie, he's taken a huge jump. Zetterquist was awesome both games. We had so many chances, we just couldn't finish. But a credit to St. Lawrence. And we haven't seen Colgate live yet, but I've watched I think 4 or 5 of their games on tape, and they're very good. They're improved. Vonner's done a nice job there. He's got some goaltending. I think he's actually got three number 1 goalies. So I don't know how he's going to work that one out. I don't envy him with that. I think 2 is nice, but 3 is a lot. But he's definitely got goaltending and some good players, and they compete hard. And they seem to have played Clarkson a lot, so I've watched a lot of those games. So I think our league's really competitive. And in the end, like, everybody's like, "Oh, what are you gonna do without 12 teams going to 4, and you got to play everybody a lot?" And I'm like, "Well, we got to play everybody 6 times. It's not that much. I mean, you get an NHL, it's a playoff series of 7 games, and a lot of these kids play junior hockey where, they're playing the same team 10, 12, 14 times a game to keep down on travel. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. I do like our league a lot. I think, obviously right now Clarkson and us are both ranked in the top 20, but I've been impressed with Colgate and St. Lawrence too. They've done a nice job. They've both taken a step from where they were last year.
Well, let's talk about that Clarkson team a little bit. Obviously, Casey Jones has had this program on the upswing for a while now. Would have made the tournament last year. They made the previous 2 NCAA tournaments before that. What have you seen on tape from this team that obviously poses a challenge to any team, not just yours?
They've got some high-end players. Josh Dunn's excellent. I'm sure. I think he got last year. From what I understand, he got NHL offers. And he came back. I mean, he's a beast. He's got a great chance to play in the NHL. And then Jacome and Tsekos, and then the freshman Campbell are all really, really dynamic. And then you sprinkle in, they've got other good players too, McCarthy and so on and so forth. So, it's a high-end team with high-end players. I think Casey's an excellent coach. He's done a great job of installing a culture there and an identity. They do a very nice job. His assistants do a great job with recruiting. And they've, become a perennial, if not top 20, maybe top 15 or top 10 team.
I know that, a big measuring stick for you and your program has been the NCAA tournament and reaching that. And this is going to be a challenge, and you already have people out there angling for how they should be selecting teams and all that. And there's no real, objective way for especially a team with only 4 leagues playing to say we should have this many teams in the tournament. So how important does it become to kind of just prove yourself on the ice every time you go out there?
Well, I mean, I think it's always important, in any year, whether we had those other 8 teams or not, it's tough. It's a fine line to make the NCAA tournament. It's tight. It can be 1 win or half a win, take a tie, make it into a win. So I don't think it's any different than any other year. I think for us, we don't know how many games we're going to play. We're definitely, normally you play your normal 34 plus playoffs. We're not going to play as many in the playoffs because they're one and done. It's going to be 2 games max in the league. So, and you don't have as many games scheduled. And then you could have games canceled. Anybody could, right? So you got to make them all count. And, we'd love to end up the year with 26, 28 games before the NCAA tournament, but who knows? It might be 20, So every game means so much. And that's so important for our players. We try to impart on them that we better be ready to go because you don't know how many chances you're going to get, how many kicks at the can. So let's make them count. And, again, we've been good so far. Not at the level I think we should be, but it's a process. And, we still got some young players and trying to bring them along. And I think we'll get better as the season goes on.
Well, it is Quinnipiac and Clarkson for 3 games, 2 nationally ranked teams from the ECAC, beginning Friday, Saturday, and Sunday down in Hampton, Connecticut. And Rand Pecknold, we always appreciate the time you give us and how candid you can be in these interviews. So we appreciate that. And good luck this weekend. Good luck staying healthy and the rest of the season that you have in front of you.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime. Thank you, and stay safe.
That's Quinnipiac's Rand Pecknold. And we'll be back with more of the Game of the Week podcast in a moment.
This is the USCHO Game of the Week podcast from US College Hockey Online.
This is the Game of the Week podcast. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly. It sounds like it's going to be 3 really great games down in Hampton, Connecticut this weekend. Clarkson, a very good team. Casey Jones putting together a pretty good track record over the last few seasons. And Quinnipiac, a perennial plus a 500 team. It should be something that helps us sort out just who the cream of the crop is in that league.
Yeah, that league is a grind. The way I look at their schedule going forward, they're going to, smash in a lot of games here, and playing 3 games this quickly in 3 days. I think the players will enjoy it. They're pretty much sick of practicing, I think, at this point. But I think that Quinnipiac, Rand Pecknold, he's a very transparent coach. I've always thought, and he said it. His team has not played their best hockey. They had a tough series against Bowling Green, then they got a couple of good wins in a row, including 2 against AIC, one in which their offense really came alive with 8 goals. But then last weekend, maybe a small step backwards. They had a hard time with St. Lawrence, winning in a shootout one night. So you get really a tie in terms of credit, and then a loss the next day. So it has not been the easiest start, but I know that this team is a pretty good team. This is a good Quinnipiac club, and they'll have a good challenge. This will be a measuring stick for both teams this weekend. But Quinnipiac, that Rand Pecknold wants those guys playing a little bit better, and he'll get that. He gets a lot out of his players.
I think if there are going to be 2 guys who are going to be key for Quinnipiac in this, and perhaps maybe the edge in the whole thing, are Odin Tufto and Keith Petruzzelli. Very talented Clarkson squad against them, but those 2 guys, to me, stand out as a cut above anybody on the opposite squad.
Yeah, I mentioned it to Rand when we were talking, and when you have players that are excelling for all 4 years, and these are guys that were good as freshmen and keep getting better, but those always ring in my mind when for a team I don't see a lot, and I don't see a lot of Quinnipiac, but you continually hear about these players because they always, throughout their 4 years, have made an impact. And as seniors, I think Tufto is, put him on the early Hobie Baker, to watch list. There's no doubt about that. He's going to probably be in the top 10. And he'll be giving a run at possibly Quinnipiac's first Hobie Baker award. But you're right. These are 2 guys. They are impact players, and they are, if you're talking about watching and keeping an eye and making sure you don't lose a player, Odin Tufto goes to the top of that list.
When we go out to the NCHC, there is a premier matchup, the second weekend of home and home 2-weekend series. This weekend, St. Cloud travels to UMD. St. Cloud coming in at number 6 in the USCHO.com men's Division I ice hockey poll. Minnesota Duluth at number 5. They split last weekend, a pretty good pair of games, and I don't expect anything less. In fact, if you had to put money on it, which I don't have money to put on it and wouldn't anyway, but if I did, I would pick a split again this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, last weekend, great games, 2 great games, an overtime game to start that series, and then St. Cloud able to pull out a 3-1 win on the back end. Now you're back in Duluth. Not that home ice really matters in these situations because the fans really don't do a lot. But, being in the confines of your own building, it'll be the first time that Duluth's able to do that this season. And what a grind. These are 2 teams that can battle it out, a lot of skill. And talked to Scotty Sandelin after their win last week. It was a special teams win. They had a bunch of power play goals, but they let up a bunch of goals when St. Cloud had the power play. And he said, it's that double-edged sword. You want to score with the power play, but you need to be better with the man advantage. And that is kind of, I think, one of the themes for Duluth is that they know that they have some scorers. They're going to get their power play goals, but they need to stay out of the box and really limit what they give St. Cloud because they'll knock them right back when it comes to the man advantage.
Number 1, Minnesota is going to travel to number 12, Wisconsin. Minnesota at 10-0 for the first time since 1940, if you can believe that one. Both teams get players back from the World Juniors, Minnesota on the back end, and a couple of big offensive threats for Wisconsin. Yeah, it'll be interesting here. We don't exactly know what everybody will be getting back in terms of players. It's a lot of it is going to be up to the individual coach. There might be some rules in terms of quarantining. So I say that all of this with the caveat. I do believe it sounds like most of these coaches are trying to get their players back into the lineups. So obviously Cole Caulfield adds a ton to Wisconsin's lineup. And then for Minnesota, the back end, as you mentioned, Brock Faber, Ryan Johnson, Jackson Lacombe, they were all big parts of that U.S. defense that won the World Juniors. So I do think that we're going to see more players than I expected. Talking to some of the coaches, they were expecting a longer quarantine, but folks have gone out of their way to make sure that these guys are getting back safely. As far as Jerry York and Boston College sending a private plane up to Edmonton to fly his guys back. So I think that we're going to see more players than we expected, and that will make this this was going to be a heavyweight battle anyways. It's going to be even more so of a battle now with some of these players back in the lineup. Also of note, in the midst of a season-long 28-game road trip for Arizona State, they get to go home a little bit in between. It's not like they're on the road the whole time, but they're on the road for all these games. Arizona State is at number 18 Notre Dame. And as we were looking at the numbers and thinking about the postseason, Arizona State needs to put together some wins to get up to that 500 mark or a little bit above by the end of the season in order for them to get some consideration for the NCAA postseason.
You know what? If there's any team out there that I would give leeway to, it's Arizona State. The fact that they're going to play all 28 of their games on the road, and the fact that they have been an NCAA tournament team over the last 2 years. Obviously, last year's tournament didn't get played. But I do believe that they're going to have to show a better record. They're 4 games below 500 right now. I think that they have to get to minimum 2-3 games above 500 to be really much of a consideration for the committee. They don't have an automatic qualifier option, so they're going to have to be some sort of an at-large selection. And it's going to be difficult to pass on a team that might be 8, 9, 10 games above 500 if you're just an Arizona State team right at or 1 game above 500, despite the fact that this has been a crazy season, despite the fact that they're going to play 28 road games all against a very tough Big Ten. But if you're Greg Powers, if you're really Arizona State, you're thinking every weekend of how am I building that NCAA resume?
Arizona State did get some goals on the scoreboard against Minnesota in Minnesota's 10th consecutive win last weekend, although it was a night of rest for goaltender Jack LaFontaine. But that had to feel good for Arizona State to get a little offense going.
The goals will come. They have a lot of talent. Obviously, Johnny Walker becomes yet another college player who pulls off the Michigan lacrosse goal when he picked one over the Minnesota tender. So, they'll come. This team has enough talent that they'll score their goals. They've got to be good on both ends. They can't get into track meets as much as they once did. I think they have to be a team that shores things up defensively if they're going to have much success here in the second half.
When we look to Hockey East, if everything goes according to Hoyle, everybody will have played this weekend. Finally, Boston University, the last of the 51 teams playing this year to get a game in, should get underway this weekend. Hockey East is a really hard one to handicap right now. It looks like UMass and BC are floating to the top, but there's a lot of talent in there and so few games played by some teams. It's hard to see how things are going to shake out.
Yeah, certainly. And, we talk about getting everybody playing, and it would have been the first weekend that all 11 teams played, but now UConn shut things down with a COVID case, and that series against Northeastern will be postponed. But you still might end up with 9 Hockey East teams playing over the course of about 7 days. And if that's the case, as you said, Boston University, I'm going to knock hard on wood. I think you can hear the audio. The Boston University finally gets underway. That has been the biggest struggle, was getting that program. They've taken things very seriously on their campus, and it is a big campus. I understand, and whether you have students there or not, you're in a big city. It's not a campus behind closed gates and walls, like some other schools. So it has been a challenge to get things going there. It's good to see them finally getting going. They're supposed to host Providence this weekend on Friday to kick things off. So hopefully things go as planned, and we'll have every one of the 51 teams finally playing hockey.
There is a premier matchup coming up next Tuesday. Greg Carville, head coach of UMass, had some pointed comments in his media availability on Wednesday about having to give up games because other teams hadn't played them, and he didn't think that was exactly fair. They do have a game on the schedule on Tuesday. The Minutemen will travel to number 15 UMass Lowell.
Yeah, and that's a nice rivalry series that has become more of a rivalry in the last few years since UMass has gotten its program back to a level that's on par with the Riverhawks. And it should be a great game. Start there. But, for these guys, they're actually moving. This is a game that would have been played a little later. Actually, they were supposed to play some games earlier, so that didn't make it. So I can't feel if this is a game that's getting moved up or if this is, a make-up for another game. Whatever it is, it was just put on the schedule a couple of days ago. It'll get played hopefully on Tuesday. But that's a good on-ice series every time these two teams play. And I think for UMass, I think Greg Carville knows what he has. This is a good team, and they've performed well. I don't know that Norm Bazin knows what his team is right now. They were very uncharacteristic in their 2 wins against Maine, where they scored 14 goals. That is not something you usually see from a Riverhawks team. But they also allowed 8 goals on the weekend in a 2-game series. So I think that there's a lot of feeling out for the Riverhawks that they've got to do internally just to even understand how good their team can be. But if you're scoring the way that they are and can continue that clip, they'll be a very powerful team.
When we look at Atlantic hockey, there are a couple of teams in the top 20, number 19, American International, number 20, Robert Morris. They're probably considered to be the top 2 teams in that league right now. They won't play each other in the regular season and may see each other in the playoffs. Robert Morris has 3 games with Niagara, 1 at Dwyer Arena at Niagara University and a couple back home. AIC has a couple of games home and a home with Army. This is an opportunity for those ranked teams to really make a statement.
You know what? I think that's going to have to happen. It's not too asimilar to what we're talking about with Arizona State, because I think that most people just look at Atlantic hockey and say, oh, they only deserve 1 bid. They should never get 2 bids. Well, if you have 2 really good teams and you don't really have a litmus test on how great they are out of conference, I think you need to award bids to teams that look like they deserve it. And it goes back to my call that every conference, even the ECAC with their 4 teams, should get 2 cracks at the NCAA tournament. Then there's other bids that you can divide up to the remaining 4 bids basically. But if you're an AIC, if you're a Robert Morris, you understand that there's little room for error, because if you do have to pass somebody's eye test at the end of the season, these games, when you get to a point where you're nationally ranked and how you perform once you get to that national ranking, these are the ones that people are starting to pay attention, starting to look at. So very important series for both of these teams, but almost every game from here on out for both, if they're both if they both have NCAA aspirations, pretty critical every game from here on out.
The Men's Division I Ice Hockey Committee is going to be meeting later this month, and that's going to be on the docket, deciding how teams will be selected. You and I have both heard rumblings from around college hockey in response to the proposal from the NCHC Commissioner Josh Fenton to use historical allocation on that. That sounds like it's going to be a tough sell. From what I'm hearing, and I imagine you're hearing about the same sort of stuff, people are not too fond of that idea.
Yeah, I've heard more negative in the last week. When it first came out, I heard a lot of people, a lot of positive rumblings, and most of it, in all honesty, coming out of the NCHC and their media, and a pretty powerful media engine you have in that league. You have, a lot of good writers among the cities that represent the NCHC. But then you start talking to coaches in other leagues, and, maybe Hockey East coaches might like it the most, but there are going to be other, I just mentioned Atlantic. You look at the ECAC, the WCHA, all of those conferences, might be taking a double take at this point. So it'll be interesting what comes out of the NCAA meetings. I believe they actually started some of those meetings this week, and they'll be talking over the next week or so. But I think we're getting to a point that we're going to understand what they're going to do with this tournament, how they're going to play it, how they're going to seed it, all of those things. So keep your ear to the ground, and we'll do the same, and hopefully have some more news in the coming weeks to deliver.
Well, even though this is a season where you can't go to the arena, this has been the best season for college hockey on TV through streaming services and networks. So make sure you catch as much as you can. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger, and we'll catch you next time.
This has been the USCHO Game of the Week podcast, a production of U.S. College Hockey Online. Visit uscho.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.